So, you're in college. You don't have any real money. Your grades don't seem to be getting any better. And talking to girls just seems to be out of the question right now. When all hope feels lost, you always remember there is one final option: internships. Nothing gives you more bragging rights as a college student than having a steady income for a few months, where you get to take what you learn in school and apply it directly on a job site. The money, the prestige, and the honor. What more could I ask for? You gain the opportunity to build strong connections with people in your field. In reality, these people you will almost never talk to outside of work. You will, however, eventually reach out to them when you need a new job, and they may or may not reply depending on how often they check LinkedIn. The first part to applying to a lot of these jobs is having a resume. It's important to make a good resume, otherwise no one will care about what you have to say. Remember, workplaces get hundreds of applicants, and the average recruiter looks at one resume for about 10 seconds. So how do you make a good resume? Well, that's why you're watching this video. So, before we begin, I just wanted to introduce myself again. My name is Yasate Sir. I'm a third-year student at the University of Waterloo. Previously, I've worked at Hitachi Rail as a software developer, and in the summer I will be also joining MongoDB as a software engineer as well. I'm always seeking new internship opportunities. Feel free to like and subscribe, as well as comment any new videos you might want me to make. Thank you, and enjoy. To start things off, how should you make your resume? I recommend using something like Overleaf and use a generic template like Jake's resume along with LaTeX to design it. You want your resume to be as generic as possible, and you want it to be in a PDF format in order to help with the ATS scanning. Now, what is an ATS? To be honest, I have no idea. ATS is an applicant tracking system that scans your resume and predicts if your resume aligns well with the job requirement. That's right, a robot literally dictates whether or not your resume passes. So always make sure that you have a resume that's easily scanned. Now, how can you do this? Take your resume, hit Ctrl-A, Ctrl-C, then paste that text into a Google Doc. See how much of that text is scrambled. If too much of the text is scrambled, the ATS will have a very hard time reading things. Now, what should we actually write on our resumes? The first thing you want to prove on your resume is that you're a human being. You want to include your name, some contact info like your email, LinkedIn, phone number, as well as your social security number. This proves to the ATS that you are a real person. Now your data can be sold to third parties for a small profit as well. The next thing you want to do is add your education. Education as an intern is very important as it shows your employer just how academically competent you are. I recommend to write a good university name because that shows that you're smart and hardworking. Some good universities you should attend are Harvard, Waterloo, MIT, and Stanford. Now, if you don't go to a good university like UFT, that's fine, but it's a little bit frowned upon. To be honest with you, no one really cares about where you go. However, having a good university will always improve your chances. Another thing you should also include is your GPA, but this is only true if it's above a 3.5. Otherwise, no. Most companies don't care too much about GPAs as long as you can do the job. It doesn't really matter. Now, the next few sections can be kind of mismatched, but here's how I would like to do it. The first thing I have is my technical skills section. I went ahead and split that into 3 parts: languages, technologies, and tools. You can add more, but generally speaking, 3 should be enough. Your languages are just things like Python, C, Rust, Java, and English. Also that one time you used Racket. Now, the technologies are things like frameworks and libraries like React and Flask. Now you might be wondering, why am I listing frameworks like Flask and Python at the same time when Flask is just Python? The issue is that HR doesn't know what Flask is, but they know what Python is, and if you just write Flask, well, your resume is just going to go in the trash. You need to pretend like the person seeing your resume is just looking for some keywords, and then based off of that, will pass your resume on to someone else. This is actually what often ends up happening. Now, the next section is your work experience. This is arguably the most important section that you have. Now, if you have work experience, just write that down in, a concise manner, use the STAR method, and make sure to use the word spearhead a lot. Also make sure to talk a lot about the impact you've created. Now, if you're watching this video, it's probably likely you don't have any work experience. In this case, I would recommend writing a lot about volunteer work you may have done, jobs that might be unrelated, even if it's like minimum wage. Another form is to do something related to unpaid work. Lots of universities have things like design teams, as well as general charity work. Academic roles, like being a TA, are also great experiences to write about. Employers like it when people are TAs, as it shows that you are academically competent in what you're learning. Now, I don't recommend this, but you can also create a fake company that is just your side project and call that work experience. Now that we've gone over this, I would like to go over side projects. So, a side project is an excellent way to show employers your interests in your field beyond just school and the workplace. Now, there are two types of side projects. I recommend, for the first type, to find a problem that you have in your day-to-day and try to make an app around it. For example, when I was younger, I made a dorm rating website in which you can rate dorms, and I got like 100 reviews at its peak until I pulled the plug. It still shows up on Google searches, actually. Now, side projects don't always have to be passion projects. I actually recommend you make projects just to learn new tech stacks, and this is the second type of side projects. For example, suppose there's a job that requires an Android developer. One of the best things you can do is just make a simple side project showcasing your usage of Kotlin or Java and making an Android app. Now, after all this, if you have a lot of white space, that's not good. You really don't want to have too much white space on your resume, but you also don't want to have things super congested. So here are some ways to help get rid of white space. In your education section, it would be nice to talk a lot about relevant coursework, but only do this if the courses are interesting and complex, not first-year courses like Calc 1. Talk about things like algorithms, networking, ML, etc., etc. Another thing you can talk about are awards sections. Awards sections are good to show to your employer whether that you are an academic weapon. You won't be using most of those skills, but it's still a good brag. Overall, writing a good resume is very important. It's the only way for you to be able to make the first step into getting a new job. Now, if you feel like your resume is still lacking, that likely means that you are inexperienced, and that's perfectly fine. Take more time to build new projects, to learn new skills, take harder classes. I recommend writing a lot about projects as it shows companies how interested you are in the entire field that you're applying to. Don't panic. Eventually, you will be able to find a job. Hopefully.